So hello everyone again, and thank you for tuning into the 5th edition of the Energy Efficiency Academy. The Academy is here to help you understand and apply the new Energy Efficiency Directive in Europe, and it is a collaborative effort of the Odyssee-Mure project, the European Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, ECEEE, and Leonardo Energy. Leonardo Energy is an initiative of the European Copper Institute, and it's one of the active contributions that copper wants to bring in advancing the energy transition. So let's dive in. As you all know, we've already delved into the targets set by the new directive in our previous webinars, and today we're shifting a bit our focus to see how EU member states are performing. Think of it as our own European Energy Efficiency Champions League or something like that. But to make things fair and transparent, because we don't want heated arguments with the reference here, so we need a clear framework in place. And that's exactly what our speakers will be presenting to you today. So please join me in welcoming Nils Borg, who is the Executive Director of ECEEE, and Wolfgang Eichhammer, Professor at Utrecht University and also researcher at the Fraunhofer Institute EC. So some of you might have had a sneak preview at this 2023 scoreboard during the ECEEE Zero Carbon Industry Conference in Antwerp last week, but today we officially launch it. So let me pass now the mic over to Nils and Wolfgang, our, let's say, commentators for this Energy Efficiency Champions League of today. So Nils, the floor is yours, and I will stop sharing my screen so that you can.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and thanks a lot, Diedert, for the introduction. It's really amazing to see our check and it's 131 participants. This is just fantastic that there is such a great interest. In ECEEE, many years ago, we discussed this thing about countries doing different things, being more or less ambitious and more or less successful. And we said we should have some sort of, at that time we called it name and shame, and that's maybe not what we want to achieve, but we just discussed it that some really are doing good things and they don't get kind of recognition for that. But of course, to do this is very difficult just to start doing it, and because you need some sort of fair and clear methodology. When ECEEE in the US started to do their, they call them scorecards. They started with the state scorecards, the city scorecards, international scorecards. Then we saw that they looked at countries around the world, but we found that they were a bit, how can I say, very many of the European countries got the same rating because they just looked for policies, the EU Energy Efficiency Directive, which is, of course, applies for everybody, but it failed to recognize the differences between countries. And I think this is when we started to discuss with people in the board, both people from Fraunhofer and from Adem, who are both in our board and are both very active in Odyssee-Mure project. We said that a scoreboard would be really good to do. And we don't, from ECEEE, we have no way, the resources to do this, but we have the platform and the outreach and the networks. We thought this was just a great combination. So I think when we had our first project approved and we could present our first scoreboard in 2021, I think this was fantastic and also very nice to see, again, in a fair, transparent way that actually the results come out, and some people got a bit annoyed that unexpected countries did well, that they were not expected to do well, and some others that had a kind of a self-view, including Sweden, that we are the most sustainable country in the world, which unfortunately we are not. We didn't make so well. So I think this is a nice and good thing for everyone to see this. I am sure we can improve and keep improving. The Odyssee-Mure project is always developing the methodology. I think a few of you will have a lot of questions for Wolfgang, who is really the expert on this. So Wolfgang will deal with that. But I'm really happy now to see our second update of the scoreboard with the new numbers. So I think this is interesting. We won't have so much slides showing the difference, how things have changed, but that is certainly something we should work on within Odyssee-Mure to see how people have developed, how the scoreboard itself has changed over the years, and it will be even more interesting if we can continue this in the future. So I will just give over to Wolfgang. I will just tell everybody that don't miss our summer study, 10th to 15th of June, a little north of Paris. It will be great, and this is just a place where a lot of these things, among others, can be discussed. So I leave it, and Wolfgang, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. I hope you can hear me well, and also the presentation is well visible. Diedert, this is the case?
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So my name is Wolfgang Eichhammer. I'm with Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research, and also IECP, Institute for European Energy and Climate Policies, and Utrecht University, as introduced by Diedert before. As Nils just right now stated, this presentation has a double intention. On one hand, naturally, we would like to show how European member states perform with respect to energy efficiency. But on the other hand, I also want to give you some insights into the methodology of the scoreboard. This is still under development. We are learning. We have some shifts in methodology, which I will also make visible later during presentation. So at the same time, you should also get some methodological insights in the limited time that is available. Let me start my introduction by looking to the energy efficiency directive that was published in a revised manner in late autumn last year. And one can say that energy efficiency has really enhanced in its ambition in Europe. And on one hand, naturally, we know that the climate change is a pressing issue. But on the other hand, especially over the past 2 years with the Ukraine war and the impacts on the supply security in a number of European countries, notably in my own country, Germany, has given us some more thoughts how energy efficiency can enhance our supply security. And with that vision, as said, the European Energy Efficiency Directive has increased ambition. I cannot dive here into the way how targets have been formulated and how policies are triggered in the EED. We touched upon this in previous presentations and will also touch upon this on other presentations in the webinar. But from the figures I mentioned here, you see that the ambition of the directive has really been enhanced compared to previously. You can also see what has been achieved here. You see the primary energy consumption and the final energy consumption and the distance to the new targets here. And enlarging this a bit, you see that Europe has, in the meantime, reached the hill of primary energy consumption, and with some ups and downs, which are due to crisis, economic crisis, financial crisis from 2010. You see the COVID dip from 2020. But overall, there is a decrease in energy consumption that has been achieved over the past 15, 17 years. But nevertheless, you also see that a large distance is still there from the achievement to what we have to reach in 2030. And 2030 is just tomorrow, just a few years. And even if I say ambition has been raised, Ambition alone does not mean that we are going to achieve the targets. And this is why we have to closely look and monitor at the policies which member states have been setting up in the national energy and climate plans in the European Union, and also at the indicators which show in a way, in a very objective way, where we stand. And this is the reason why we have been setting up this scoreboard. It is based on two well-known databases that have been used in a number of policy analysis. That is the Odyssey database on energy efficiency indicators and the Mure database on energy efficiency policies. Both are accessible on the internet with a large number of tools, of analysis tools, of data and reports that can be accessed. There is a large amount of work over the past, I would say, decades that have been flowing into those databases, both from the statistical side, the statistical data which national teams across the different European countries have been collected. And we are presently enlarging by looking to the so-called energy community parties. These are, for example, Balkan countries, countries like Georgia, Ukraine, Moldavia, which are presently not in the European Union, but which are on a path to come closer to the Union. So they will also, in a way, be integrated in this database in the future. Let me now show you, first of all, how the scoreboard works. So why scoring? Why comparing member states? As Nils said in the beginning, it's not about blame and shame, but we are scoring our efforts in many fields. From schools, we get school grades. In sports, we have scoring. Look every week at this. We have scoring in economic activities. We have country scorings in innovation fields and so on. So many activities where we score, and so it's natural also to try to provide an objective picture where we stand in our energy efficiency efforts. And for that, we have composed three components to measure the performance of energy efficiency across the different member states. First of all, the first two are based on energy efficiency indicators. The first one describes the level where a country stands in a certain sector or in a certain use of energy. The second describes the progress, so the change in the indicator in the different indicators over a certain point of time. And then the third component measures policy impacts, quantitative policy impacts, which have been derived from evaluations, ex ante evaluations in particular. And we are now looking at policy impacts in the year 2030, which distinguishes the previous scoreboard, where we had a focus on the 2020 perspective. Also, the time frame has been adapted from 2000 previously to 2010 to present in the trend analysis. So there are a number of methodological changes. And you see that this covers 4 major sectors: transport, services, households, and industry. So it's a relatively complex building already for scoring. And these 3 components are equal and composed into the overall score for one sector or across all sectors. And I will give you some insights into results. Naturally, it will not be possible to look at all countries, all sectors here. So I will try to give you some glimpse into the results here. The level, just to give you insight what exactly is meant with the 3 components. The level set is based on indicators, and it answers the question, how is my country currently performing with respect to energy efficiency. And this is based on indicators. And what is important to understand is that the scoring is based on adjusted indicators and mainly physical indicators. Naturally, if you are in a cold country, you use more energy for heating your buildings per square meter, or if you have an energy industry, your industrial consumption is higher. And the indicators that we use here are corrected for a number of these differences, which are valid across the different countries. Otherwise, the comparison would not be fair. So this is in a way the present state of energy efficiency in a country. The trend shows the achievements over time. Similar type of indicators are taken here as for the level, but looking at their evolution over time, and as is written here, since the year 2010 to present, so about the last decade, roughly speaking. And finally, as I already said, the policy impacts, and this is also something which is quite an achievement, that we have so many policies which are quantified, easy to achieve, and these quantified policies are evaluated with the target frame to 2030, including policies from 2010 onward, because policies over the last years also have impacts in 2030. So for the moment, we combine both policies which have already been introduced over the past few years and policies which are starting right now, or proposed to be starting very quickly. Naturally, it's important to understand that the policy impacts which are projected to 2030 are a promise to the future. Not necessarily these policy impacts materialize, and there are a number of examples where, for example, countries, due to budget problems, have been reducing programs, and sometimes quite substantially, or there have been delays in the implementation of policy measures, which naturally then leads over time that the expected impacts may be lower in a number of cases as compared to what is projected. But this, in a way, is something which evolves dynamically in the scoreboard, or is reflected dynamically in the scoreboard, and finally also translated into the achievements concerning the level and the trend, which is expressed in the other two components. Now, before I try to bring to you the view on the overall champion, let's say, across the different sectors, I would nevertheless try to give you still a little bit more insight into one sector which can be particularly interesting, which is the residential sector, the household sector, so that you understand how the scoreboard is working. First of all, the component level, and I have noted here a few countries which are in fact among the top 5 concerning the level in households, and I will explain why these countries are there, and at the same time also, as the indicators are related, discuss the trend among those countries here. You see here a number of Nordic countries, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Lithuania, northeastern country, and also the Netherlands. And let's have a look which country, according to the establishment of the score, comes up as the first among those one. And you see here the list of these 5 countries, and the score numbers show that the countries are here relatively close together. The top country is normalized to 1 in one sector and in one component, while the normalized to 0, and the countries in between are correspondingly normalized. And this is done for each of the components, of the 3 components which finally compose the overall score. As you see here, these countries are close together in the ranking, so performing relatively similar, one would say. Looking at the second important component for the household sector is the trend. Here again, a number of countries mentioned as the top 5: Croatia, Netherlands, Latvia, Luxembourg, and Ireland. So you see there are already different countries here in the trend there. And looking at those countries, you see that in that case, Luxembourg has the quickest trend in the household sector. Then you have other countries like Latvia, Croatia, Ireland, which come well in developments here in this trend component. Now let's try to understand a bit how this comes about, and for that I'm projecting you here how the level is evaluated by using Odyssey indicators. And in fact, in households we have 4 different parts which represent different end uses in household sectors. The first one is the most important one. It's the heating consumption, which is important for many countries in Europe, but as specified here, we scale it to the average European climate in order to put colder and warmer countries at an equal foot, and there is also some correction here between countries who use more central heating and more decentral heating. That is a major component here, but there are also other components which are taken here. For example, other thermal uses are represented, for example, in terms of consumption per dwelling for cooking, water heating. We represent in the composition of the level here the appliances. This is in terms of specific consumption of electricity per dwelling for appliances and lighting. And then also we take into account some, some renewables by considering solar penetration. And these different parts are then integrated into the overall scoring for the level here. I should also say that the consumption for heating is given per square meter. So also the size of the different houses are in a way normalized. There are countries that have larger houses and other countries have smaller houses. And there is also a trend over time by the number of square meter that does not enter here the scoring part. Let me quickly now show you some insights here on the heating part here, and this is the normalized value, and you see here first of all European Union, and I will show you other countries in the same graph here. What is important here to realize that over the last 10 years, this average consumption of European Union per square meter, despite quite a number of important policies, has changed little. I mean, this is corrected for climate variations and so on, and it has little changed over time, as you can see here from the average look at European Union. These are the countries that compose the top part of the level for household. We look here, just to record it, at the space heating part in this, and here you see the Nordic countries, which are here lower than the EU average, which is quite instructive, because those are colder countries. So in a way, they have been even normalized to the average European climate. They have been very efficient in insulating their houses. On the other hand, you have other countries that have been less successful. You see countries like Germany, France, Luxembourg, and Croatia, for example. which have in fact not so cold climates as the Nordic countries, but they have been less efficient in at least in the level to reach comparable levels to the Nordic countries. What you can also see on the other hand, I mean, this is levels that you can compare 1 year, but there is also the evolution over the last 10 years. And there it's a bit different. The Nordic countries, as they have already a good position, they were less able to achieve improvements, while countries with a higher level may have had quicker improvements. This is the case here, for example, of Croatia, for example, as a more southern country here, but still from a pretty high level in this normalized picture. What are the policies that impact here? The policy score as the third component. And here, the countries which score best on policy are marked here. We have France and Germany. We have Luxembourg, Poland, Romania here. Here you see the ranking in the policy component. There is more spread here. Germany is coming here first, but let me recall you that the policies are the policy impacts are projected for 2030. So this is still a promise to the future. While here we saw previously that Germany is above, in this normalized picture, is above the European average here. A very quick view on the policies. They are very different across countries. I've here listed 3 countries: Germany, Poland, and France. We have in Germany, for example, tax incentive scheme, which is expected to have quite some impact next to building regulations, which I did not mention here for space reason. In Poland, we have also tax reliefs, but also interesting agreements with municipalities to insulate multifamily houses or flats owned by the municipality and housing communities. In France, we have mandatory standards for buildings, also in other countries, naturally. And we have, for example, the program MaPrimeRénov', which provides subsidies for thermal renovation of private buildings, but only below for the lower income households. So this is also aiming at the part of the population which is closer to energy poverty. Now all this is these 3 components level, trend, and policy are combined and to the overall score. And here you see, when combining this for household sector, remember we are still in the household sector, which country is doing best. We have here France, Germany, Latvia, Luxembourg, and Netherlands. And here in that picture, Luxembourg, Germany, Netherlands, France, and Latvia appear as best. Here we don't have any more, we don't reach 1 because this is the average across the 3 components. Luxembourg comes out for the trends we saw. Germany comes out for the policy impacts, the same as France, while Netherlands, for example, came out for the level, but also other positions on the policy side. So you see already for the household sector alone, the overall score is a kind of mixture of these 3 components, and below the 3 components, as you saw, you have end users, for example, in the household sector, which built up the score. And in order to really understand where a country is in the list, in the scoring, one can dive deeper into the different parts of the scoreboard. Very quickly, as time is advancing, a look to the transport sector. Here, just provide you the result. There are also here the top 5 countries. In the overall scoring, the transport sector is not performing in general very well. And you just for your understanding, here again we compose the scoreboard when it comes to the level and trend to different modes here. You see in particular the cars with their specific consumption in terms of energy per person, kilometers. You see the goods transport, air transport, and also modal split enters this scoring here. Each of these parts are, by the way, weighted with a factor which corresponds to a certain share in energy consumption or a certain share in total transport consumption here. Here again, just to give you a little bit insight, using here the liters per 100 kilometer, not exactly the same indicator here for consumption per person kilometer, but here it's the liters per 100 kilometer. It's a somewhat different indicator, but it's also very, very instructive to see how this looks across the different countries. Here again, European Union, EU27, and you see over the past 20 years here, an improvement of roughly speaking 1 liter per 100 kilometer in 20 years, so not a terrible amount of savings. And when you look at the different countries, here at first you see countries who have been doing better than the average. Italy, France traditionally have smaller cars, hence less consumption per 100 kilometers. Luxembourg also had a quite interesting evolution here. And Greece is an interesting case because you see that Greece has been quite on European average or even slightly above. But due to the economic crisis that started essentially 2010, 2011, Greek people were potentially, that would be my interpretation, forced to be, to move to smaller, less consuming cars, which is quite striking on the period of time since 2012. On the other hand, you have countries that are considerably above the average. Interesting is the case of Poland, where potentially due to the car size, the consumption was even re-increasing because the country is doing well and people apparently buy larger cars. And Latvia, another Eastern country, has even more consumption, but at least quite some decrease here. Germany, the curve is roughly parallel to the European average, but always higher, because in Germany we have larger cars compared to Italy and France, and this is reflected naturally here in the scoreboard. This is the overall view on a larger number of countries, but as I said here, this is difficult to read. Policies, very quickly touch upon two of them. One is in Germany. It has a terrible German name. It's a Fuel Emission Trading Act. And in fact, we call it ETS2, though, so the second emission trading scheme, but it's not European, it's a national one, which is aiming at transport and buildings and expected to have quite a lot of impact. It's in some part similar to a CO2 tax, but with more flexibility in future, like the emission trading scheme. And also in Luxembourg, we have CO2 tax. Now time is advancing, and I'm very sorry I cannot show you the industry sector, because otherwise we would not have time. You have much more slides here, by the way, in the presentation, also in the annex. In the industry sector, again, you see here and also some explanation of countries, why they come out as more performant. You see here essentially the top 5, which have in the trend a very strong decrease. A number of them are Eastern countries, because the industries have been evolving quite a lot of time over the past 10 years to improve. Slowest progress you see in the upper part is, for example, in a country like Germany, which has been really slow, especially over the past decade, to improve industry efficiency. Finally, coming to the overall picture here, and you see here the across all sectors, across all 3 components, the overall scoring, and these are the 5 countries, Luxembourg, Germany, France, Latvia, and Denmark, that are the champions across all sectors, across all components. But I hope that you have been understanding that there is a lot to dive into the different sectors, to dive into the different applications, to understand why, for what reason a country comes at this position. Germany does in a number of cases well on the policy score, but as said, these are promises to the future still and need to be realized by concretely implementing and evaluating the policies over time. This is a look to the champion Luxembourg, where it scores well, and you see where the 1 is placed in the case of Luxembourg. They are doing well on one hand in some sector like services on the policy side. They do well in the trend, for example, in transport and household, but they do less well, in particular on the level. And by studying these kind of learn from this. I'm coming to the end, and sorry for being a little bit over time here. Let me make a few remarks. As said, we are looking at the policy impacts for 2030, so promise to the future, as I said, but some policies that are existing for a few years are included here in the scoring. Trends are more advantages for Eastern and Southern countries, given that they had a less good starting position. But they had, and one must say it's not by chance that they were improving. They had for quite a number of them ambitious energy efficiency policies over the past. Also, you also saw the case of Poland, for example, with this re-increase due to potentially the size of the cars. In the middle of the scoreboard, sometimes the scores are close, so positions can change with smaller variations. That's like in football. You have 20 teams and you are in the middle. Positions can change quite rapidly. And overall, no country, even the best, is excellent in all sectors and in all 3 components in energy efficiency, which means there is still a lot of scope to improve energy efficiency. And we hope by looking to this scoreboard over time, we will contribute also to understand the efforts. Here you get the website where you can look at the scoreboard, the explanations of the methodology. You can look at the individual sectors and the individual components and individual countries and get more insight. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm looking forward for discussions here.